everyone, welcome to this course. My name is Didi and I will be your professor in this quarter. This is the very first video that I will post on Camino. In this video, I will focus on the scope of this course. After watching this video, you will have an overarching idea on what we are going to do and what we are able to achieve within this quarter. The title of this course is Race and Inequality. This is a primarily sociology course, but it is also cross-listed with ethnic studies. Have you ever thought about some of these questions? What is race? What is ethnicity? What are the differences between race and ethnicity? How does racial and ethnic inequality manifest itself in different domains in our current society? And how can we understand the manifestation of racial and inequality even more critically? If you have ever thought about these questions, this may be a course for you. But before jumping into the specific content of race and inequality from a primarily sociological perspective, I need to highlight some of the strengths and the limitations of sociology. These strengths and limitations will be translated in this course. Sociology as a discipline examines racial and ethnic inequality in the society. It is good at identifying what is happening in the current society, and it is not so good at identifying the historical traditions. Sociology is good at finding out patterns that emerge on the group level, but it is not so good at hearing the narrative from specific individuals or a single individual. This is because, methodologically speaking, sociology is good at finding out patterns, but not so good at always including the narratives from the so-called outliers. I need to highlight here that we as sociologists are working really hard to include the voices from outliers. And finally, sociology is a data-driven discipline. And I think this is the biggest strength and also a really salient limitation of sociology. What does it mean for sociology to be a discipline that focuses on the operation of the society and more specifically the operation of the current society? In this course, we'll talk about the construction of race and ethnicity, and more importantly, the reproduction of racial and ethnic inequality in different domains in the society. The domains that we will talk about include, but are not limited to, healthcare, education, academic sciences, religion, among others. When we are discussing the intersection between race and these different social institutions, we are focusing more on the reproduction of inequality in our current societies and the implications from this reproduction on people's experiences. Admittedly, on the syllabus, I included some content on historical narratives. The purpose for me to include these historical narratives is to allow us to have a more robust understanding on the social construction of race and ethnicity and on the implications from these historical narratives to our current societies. The purpose is not to dive deep into the historical traditions. This is not a strength of sociology. Related, sociology is a discipline that is good at identifying patterns for groups, but not so good at hearing the specific stories and the narratives from one single individual. We as sociologists believe in two things. First, we believe that inequality is manifested on the grand level, and more precisely on the group level. Second, we also believe that what we have learned about the groups will help us to better understand the individual's experiences. This means when you are reading the textbook, watching the YouTube video, reading other assigned materials, you may wonder, what about the stories from one single individual? Can we hear more narratives from one specific individual to have a more in-depth understanding on this person's experience? We acknowledge that this is a super valid and a really, really important perspective, but this is not a strength of sociology. The strength of sociology is to identify the group level patterns, and hopefully, by identifying the group level patterns, we can understand individuals' experiences on a more in-depth level. This limitation/strength is also related to a methodological strength/limitation associated with sociology. On the screen, you will see a PDF of normal distribution. Many sociologists love normal distribution. This is partially because of the empirical rules. According to the empirical rule, most of the cases, more precisely 68% of the cases, are situated in one standard deviation around mean. 95% of the cases are situated in two standard deviations around mean. And 99.7% of the cases are situated in three standard deviations around mean. Sociology is good at finding out patterns. Translating this methodological strength to this normal distribution, sociology sometimes are able to identify the experiences, perceptions, and narratives of 68 or 95% of the people within the population that we are currently studying. But many of us know that the society is super complex. In many of the cases, sociologists may not be able to identify the experience of 95% of people. We may only be able to identify the experiences of 68% of people within our population, or sometimes even a smaller group of people. Many of you may wonder, what about the experience and narratives of people who are situated beyond 1 and 2 standard deviations around me? These are the people that may be perceived as the so-called outliers. We recognize that our methodological strength also translates into a limitation that we are not so good at including the narrative from every single individual within the population. One approach that many sociologists are taking is that if we realize the voices from one specific group of people within a population or some group of people within a population are really muted in the previous discussions, we will only focus on this small subset of the population, and then we will utilize the strength of the sociological methods to identify the patterns that emerge from this small subset of the population. Other researchers and scholars may further argue, even by identifying the patterns emerge with a subset of the population, you are ignoring the voice and experience of people who are situated beyond the 2 standard deviations within a subset of population. What are you going to do? Sociologists say that then we will only focus on the voices from this group of people who we have not sufficiently studied, draw another normal distribution, identifying further patterns, and see how we can know the society better. This means that when reading some sociological theories, especially some theories, discussions, or conclusions about race and inequality, some of you may wonder the theory does not apply to a case that I have heard of, a narrative that I have heard of, or some cases that I read on the newspaper articles. If you are having such questions, you are identifying a huge limitation associated with sociology, and you are also appreciating the strength of sociology, which is finding out patterns. Throughout this quarter, I will also invite all of you to work together as a class to identify what are the voices that we have not included in the current sociological discussions on race and inequality, and more importantly, what are the additional research that we can do to further build up this discipline. Finally, sociology is a data-driven discipline. I personally think that this is a huge strength of sociology. We can always make data-driven conclusions and policy recommendations. But I also acknowledge that this is a huge limitation of sociology because many of the sociological conclusions are constrained by the availability of data. What does it mean to having a data-driven approach in the understanding of race and inequality? First, it means that when you are writing your reflections, writing your assignments, or engaging the discussion on the discussion board, I may consistently or constantly ask you, what is your data? What type of data is it? What are the limitations associated with data? How can you make inferences based on the availability of data? Why do you utilize this type of data instead of that type of data? This is because I am a sociologist, and sociology is a very data-driven discipline. Second, it also means that by constraining by the availability of the dataset, sometimes sociologists are not able to make super pioneer and innovative conclusions or speculations on the operation of the society, particularly related to the reproduction or reduction of race and inequality. So, with that said, a huge strength of sociology as a discipline is associated with a limitation constrained by the availability of the dataset. I really hope that by giving you a comprehensive picture on the strength and the limitation of this course, many or all of you are willing to stay with me, and throughout this quarter, we will particularly focus on race and inequality and appreciate the strength of sociology, but also acknowledge the limitations of sociology. Some of you are wondering that I am not coming from a sociology background. I am in this course through a different course number, which is not primary sociology. So what does it mean to this course to have students from different disciplines? This means that I would really, really love to have your voices in the discussion board, in your interactions with your peers, as well as in your interactions with me. The limitations that I described before about the disciplinary limitation of sociology, these are not inherently limitation of human knowledge. In fact, there are many other disciplines that are doing a much better job in, for instance, identifying the historical root or hearing the narrative from one single individual. So this is the value of having a class of people from different disciplines, because we can all work together and think about, are there any ways in which that we can borrow some valuable components and strength from different disciplines and construct a more comprehensive understanding about how the society operates? The interdisciplinary nature will be manifested in many of our case analysis, in the discussion board, and also in your reflections and in your critical analysis of some of the course material. But the textbook and many of the material that I will share with you will be primarily sociological. That said, I would really love to have you be in this course. But if you are looking for a historical explanation or a historical analysis of race and ethnicity, if you are looking for a more nuanced understanding of the story from one single individual, or if you are looking for some pioneer speculations that may enlighten our ways in which to understand society, perhaps this is not the best course for you. But I also acknowledge that there are other courses offered by other faculty members primarily affiliated with different departments in Santa Clara University, and they are offering courses with a focus on a very similar topic, but with a different strength. If you do not think this course is the best fit for you, I will also be very happy to refer you to the other courses. And that concludes my overarching introduction of the scope of this course. I really hope that you will take a moment, pause this video, and think if the course will be a good fit for you. And if you decide to continue studying this course, I would invite you to watch the second video. In the second video, we will jump into the logistical details of this course, and I will work you through the syllabus, the caminos, to facilitate a smooth learning experience for all of us.